Good morning. There was this bushwalker walking along a bush track and he came to a cliff face looking over a spectacular valley. He crept closer and closer to the edge looking at this stunning view until he crept too close and the ground gave way and he slid down. Accelerating at 9.8 metres per second squared, he was moving quickly to oblivion when this branch, this bush sticking out of the cliff face, he grabbed hold of as he passed. And he clung and hung. He looked up and it was a long way up. He looked down and it was even further. And he didn't know what to do. In the end, he did the only thing he could think of. He yelled out. He took a deep breath and, "Is anybody up there? Please help me." Silence. He yelled again. "Is anybody there? Can someone help me, please?" Silence. And then with all his might, he screamed out, "Is anyone up there? Please, someone help me. Can you?" And there was a voice. "I'm up here. Who are you? Can you help me?" "I'm God, and I believe I can help you." "Well, what should I do?" "Let go." "Is there anybody else up there?" Letting go. Letting go is really hard, whether it's hanging on a cliff face and you hear this voice of God saying let go, or whether it's letting go of the things that are important to us, that attach themselves to us, the things that hold us, the things that we're required to let go of as we go through life, the endings that come upon us, the endings that are there before a new beginning can take place. There's a woman who came to church one day, looked a bit lost, overwhelmed, confused, bewildered, and some women welcomed her and sat with her and then took her over for a cup of tea afterwards and they chatted, and she shared how she'd moved into a local retirement village because her children had encouraged her and they lived locally in the hills area, and she came from the other side of Sydney, and over there were shops around villages and train stations and main roads, and here they were malls or something, and she didn't know where they were and where were dentists and doctors. She was lost. And they asked if I'd go around and visit, which I did. And she shared that same story, but as we talked I realised they were symptoms, that her real issue was grief and loss, that she had to let go to so much. Her family home that she'd built with her late husband, and the family that had come, the children, of the neighbours and the stories and the memories and the friends and the area that she lived in and the people she knew and the group she was part of, the church and the volunteer groups and the shops she knew and the shopkeepers that looked after her, and everything was different. And she had to let go of that old life to embrace this new one. And it would take time. And with time she gained a new church and some new neighbours and new friends and settled into this place. She was able to visit some of the old friends in the old neighbourhood from time to time, and they visit her. But the new beginning couldn't happen until she began to let go and grieve the loss. And that's the way it is with endings and beginnings. A new beginning cannot emerge in our life until we let go of what was. And that's part of the whole journey of life, the phases and stages of life that invite us to let go. To let go of what is, to take hold of what can be. Sometimes it's the journey into a deeper experience of being and living and letting go of the attachments and the things that cloud out our lives and crowd us in and obsess us and possess us. There's a story this week that comes from the ancient story of the Hebrew people, and it's their patriarch and matriarch, Abram and Sarai, who become Abraham and Sarah, and they're living in their home, this hometown, this city, and they're invited by this God, God they worship, this voice that calls them out into a future with promises and hope, and they don't know what. And it says, go, take your family and servants and flocks and go. And they don't know where. And with courage and hope and faith, they pack up what they have and can take, and they journey. They journey to this promised land that is mysterious and unknown, that's out there somewhere. And it's a journey to get there. the journey in some sense is the destination, because the journey is about growth and learning and growing more deeply in spirit, in truth, in being. It's a physical journey, but it's also emotional, psychological, and deeply spiritual. But they go. They have to let go of what was in order to embrace what can be. In another story that John tells, Jesus is met at night by a religious leader, or in the dark. This religious leader, Nicodemus, who is meant to be an enlightened one who holds the faith and the law and the traditions of his people to teach them and guide them and lead them. This one comes to Jesus in the dark. And the image or the metaphor is of him, the enlightened one, not knowing, being lost, being confused, not having enlightenment, if you like, of seeking, of yearning something deeper. And he glimpses and sees it in this one Jesus, and he goes to him. In his darkness he goes to the light, this outcast, this person on the fringe, this rabbi who speaks of the reign of God. And Jesus says, if you want this reign, if you want the things I speak of, this love, this profound love and life and hope, you've got to let go. You've got to be born anew. And Nick hears this as born again. How can I enter my mother's womb? And he says, no, Nick. Born from above, born of spirit, born anew. You have to let go of what was, of the things you cling to, the belief systems, the religiosity, the literal laws, the control and the power you have, the belief that you know and you can control your life and you can control other people's lives. You need to let go. You need to allow the Spirit to blow through you like the wind blowing where it will, guiding and taking you. You need to let go in order for this new thing to embrace you and take you into a deeper sense of being and living and existence. We don't know really what happens with Nicodemus, except he's there at the end of the story and he seems different. Maybe the journey into enlightenment was really his. I've read and heard the story of another man who lived with addictions. Every sort of addiction you could name he was into. It was a man who grew up in violence and dysfunction and confusion and a difficult home and communal life. And he turned to these addictions for distraction and safety, to keep him distracted from the pain. And they were leading him into all sorts of oblivion, and in his 20s he didn't believe he'd make 30. And the world would be a better place. He was like a bull in a china shop. Everything he touched and did and all the people, it was hard. And he made things worse. And he thought the world and others would be better off without him. He was forced into a rehab program through a crisis and more groups and programs and 12-step programs. He'd been through it all and had failed. But for once someone listened to him. His mentor, his carer, this support person, listened empathetically and in love. And heard this story of pain and dysfunction and violence and of addictions that helped him cope and live and survive. And the guy affirmed him and said, you know, you found a way to survive. Probably not the best way, but you've done it. Good on you. And that opened a door for this man to recognise that he had a problem. I mean, he knew he had a problem, but admitting it to himself and to others, and recognising that he couldn't save himself, he couldn't fix his own life. If he could, he would have. But he needed to rely on this higher power. Some in the group believed the higher power was the program or the mentors or those further along the journey. But he knew that the higher power had to be bigger than that. Had to be bigger, this divine love that he glimpsed and heard about, that he named God. And he needed to learn to pray and meditate and go deeper into himself. This wasn't just physical or psychological. It was all of that, but it was spiritual. And he learned to meditate and to pray, to contemplate. And he does it every day in order to keep his life on track. And then he needed a community around him, people who could hold him, who could love him, who could understand him and not judge him, but support him when he went down, to lift him up. And he could do the same for them. And here he was, moving through this life, clean and alive and hopeful, and sharing this hope with others. And I think that's part of Nicodemus's journey. It's the journey all of us take in our lives. Maybe not all those addictions, but the letting go, the endings to get a new beginning. Sometimes these endings come on suddenly, like the people in Turkey and Syria, where an earthquake devastates their lives and they're thrust into a new way of life and seeking a new beginning out of this turmoil and chaos and death and devastation. Sometimes the ending is slow and gentle, and sometimes it's something we yearn for, breaking out of the patterns of life that are defeating and horrible and dying. And Jesus invites us into this way that is about dying and rising, about letting go in order to rise again into a new thing. And it takes courage, and it takes a will, and it takes a letting go, which isn't easy. It's grieving and wrestling with the attachments, the things that we cling to, the power and the control we want to have over our lives and the lives of others, and to control our life and live it the way we think it needs to be lived. And Jesus says, let go. Let go. And ultimately, in our lives, there is this letting go, gradual letting go, until the ultimate letting go, which is death, of letting go of everything in order to be born into a new thing, which is mystery. Us on this side of death have never experienced it. But we glimpse something of the Spirit, of this thing beyond in thin places, this heaven, this world beyond, this mystery beyond all things, this love at the heart of all things that holds us. And in Jesus' story, we hear that it's this Trinity of love, this God at the heart of all things, this divine love that holds us, that is the destination of our journey, from the one from whom all things come and then return. And it requires a letting go to gain wisdom and life and hope and peace, into a community of people who are inclusive and loving and gracious and supporting one another. This is the journey we're all on, with endings and beginnings, and supporting each other in the crises and the joy and the pain, and knowing that God is in our midst, loving us and leading us like Abram and Sarai into this mysterious new beginning that only God knows. Will you follow?